Welcome everyone. And so far, so good. I believe we have basic understanding of HTML. You don't need to know everything. Even me, that I've been coding since how many years, I don't know everything in HTML, but I have basic understanding. Not just basic, I have like general understanding of HTML, what it does, and I use it almost every day. And so what I use regularly is the things I tell you guys to learn. There are a lot of elements that I've never used and you may never use it. So you don't need to know everything. So that is it. Along the course of this training, you will also learn others. So when the need arrives for maybe a HTML element that you don't know, come on, you are free to Google it. This documentation is free and always there for you. So in programming, we don't try to cram, we try to understand, not cram, because it's not like there's any harm in doing Expo. No, there's no programmer that doesn't Google. Like even if you are 100 years experience, you will still Google for simple things like how to do very simple things. Nobody remember all those things. So CSS also, I expect us to have basic understanding of CSS. So those of us that were in the last session we did, I tried to explain some basics of HTML and CSS, and I tried to connect them together to make us understand how HTML and CSS work together to produce a beautiful site. So today now we are looking at JavaScript. So as I told us from the beginning, I said HTML is like the building block. So HTML is the block in your house. Just see HTML to be the building block. It is HTML that builds the website. You build the building block of a website is HTML, but we use CSS to style it. So this site is looking like this because there are HTML elements. So if I do Control U, it will show me the source code of this site. So this is the actual source code for this site. So you see this is HTML elements, and then we also have CSS and JavaScript. So this is now a CSS, for instance. This is another CSS. So it means this site is looking like this because they wrote the HTML, but it was very ugly. Then they used CSS to give it this background, right? They use CSS to style this button, to make it round, to add this color, to arrange them to be like this. All these things were done with CSS, all the background color, the font size, the color, the space, the border, a lot of things here is CSS. But we need JavaScript. JavaScript is the engine that handles user interaction. So what it means is that JavaScript will be like um, I'm looking for a physical scenario to explain it. It's the engine that handles user interaction. It may be difficult to explain, but with time you'll get to understand it. So JavaScript is what makes an application to be interesting. It's what makes an application to work, to respond to user events. So if you go to if I open this site in incognito mode, how do they do it? New incognito window, and I go to twitter.com, right? You see Twitter is telling me that I need to join Twitter, right? And now, for me to join Twitter, most of us are already conversant with the attitude of clicking, right? So we just click and we expect something to happen. Immediately I click on okay, I already have an account. I click on sign in. There is actually a JavaScript that is making my click to work, right? There is a JavaScript when I click. There is a JavaScript somewhere that open this thing. We call this modal. When I click on this is a close button. When I click on it, there's a JavaScript somewhere that listens to when a user click on that button, and then it handles the event. So that is why JavaScript is the real programming language here. HTML and CSS is is a language, but not really a programming language. HTML is a markup language. CSS is a styling sheet. It's just a language that, if I use language, it may confuse you. It's just a set of instruction for styling. While HTML is just a set of instruction for what? For the building blocks. JavaScript is the real programming language. What makes it a programming language that you should know is when it can handle if and else statement. Like right now, there's a JavaScript code that says if the user click on sign in, open a modal, a sign in modal. This is the sign in modal. If the user click on close, this is a button for close. This button is actually designed with HTML and CSS, but the button will not know how to do anything on its own because it doesn't know when the user will, it doesn't even care about the user clicking it. So it is when you click on it now, the JavaScript will now do something. So that is what programming is. Programming most of the time has a lot of if. If the user do this, do this. If the user do this, do this. Like Windows is an operating system. It was built with a programming language. They say if the user click on this start icon, show this thing. If they click on it again, close it. That is where programming comes in. And that is why I say JavaScript is where the fun is. And it is JavaScript that they will pay you for. You will hardly get a reasonable or serious job with HTML, CSS. It is when you know JavaScript that you can earn up to millions. Like, I'm not joking, right? So this thing is practical. It's something that you will enjoy if you really see it like a game. Those days when I was growing up, we used to play some of those children games. And it can be so hard. Some of the game were difficult at the beginning. But when you kill the boss like this, or one hard stage, you go happy, say, ah, I don't pass this stage. So it's something like that. See it to be a little difficult, but tell yourself that let me create a button that when they click on it, it will show a modal. And when they click on the close, it will close the modal. As simple as this interaction is, if you challenge yourself that you want to do something like this, you will be forced to learn a lot of things. First of all, how do you create a modal? How do you trigger the modal to show and hide? All those things are very, very interactive. They are real life. And as simple as what you are learning, you may think that which day am I going to use it? This is Twitter site. Twitter site, if you do Control U here, you will see that it's HTML. So the HTML you guys have learned so far, you think that it's just basic HTML. It's actually the building block of Twitter, Facebook, Google. Think of any web application you are thinking of. It's built with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So what you have learned so far, you can come to Twitter site, go to their source code. When you see HTML, you understand what it means, right? I explained this line last week, right? It is HTML and it has a language of English, Great Britain English, right? So you can see this is a P element, this is a div, this is an image, so like it's very real. So what you are learning is practical. It's something that if you know it on your own, you can build your own personal application. You can build application for others. You can you can work in a company. You can work in Twitter, Facebook, Google, anywhere you think of. So it's very, very practical. That is why I choose programming. I read physics, but physics is mostly abstract. They told us, teach us quantum mechanics and all those things. We just spend several hours. proving formulas that we don't even understand. But this is practical, like it's very practical. And that is where I expect us to have more fun. In fact, the joy of it should make us to spend longer time than even expected. So that is JavaScript. JavaScript is what gives us that power. It's what makes a website to become an application. The origin of website was just very basic thing to just display text and images and simple thing. The only thing the user can do is to click on link. You know, these ones are link. Link is already a feature of HTML. We know HTML have anchor. So the anchor element will always link you to another HTML page. That is not JavaScript. When you click on it, it will link you to another page. But apart from linking to another page, I don't think a normal HTML page can do anything again. But with JavaScript, you'll be able to handle a lot of things. So let's click on Learn JavaScript and just look at the basic overview of JavaScript. I'll just walk it through with you. JavaScript doesn't have end also. I just want us to learn the basic and then intermediate. When we know basic and intermediate, then we'll move to learning a framework. In real life, you'll be using framework to work. So we'll move to learning a framework. Maybe React is the most popular framework and it has more job opportunity. So probably when we know JavaScript basic and advanced, you move to learning React. React is very simple. It's just using the JavaScript you know, but using it in a framework to make your work easier. So JavaScript is the world's most popular programming language. It is the language of the web. What it means is that the web only understands JavaScript. So even if I'm working with PHP, C Sharp, whatever, that code has to be converted to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript somewhere for the browser to understand it. That is why for you to run JavaScript, you don't need to install anything special. Your browser can run it because the browser by default is using JavaScript engine. So JavaScript is easy to learn. This tutorial will teach you JavaScript from basic to advanced, blah 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 blah. And then we'll go to introduction. Okay. So what can JavaScript do? JavaScript can change HTML content. So like the HTML you write uh, can be just static, but you can use JavaScript to change the content of an HTML. In fact, in real life, we use JavaScript to write our HTML. So a basic, a modern application will not contain the HTML. It is the JavaScript that will be writing the HTML behind the scene for that application. It's advanced for me to explain it, but you can use JavaScript to create an HTML element behind the scene. You can use it to modify existing HTML elements. So you can use it to change HTML content, right? So I will show us all those practical. We can use JavaScript to change HTML attributes. So like if I click on light on, this color change. This is just color that is changing, or probably you can change the images. So light on, light off. Basically, if you look at this thing, me I feel it's just the yellow that is changing. So it's JavaScript that is knowing they put an event listener. We call it event listener. An event is anything that the user is doing is called an event. So when the user hover on, that means your mouse move on top of something, you hover on it, it's an event. When you click on it, it's also an event. So right now, there is a JavaScript that is listening to when this user click on this thing. In fact, let me show you the code. So look at it. You see it's just HTML, HTML. Then inside the button element, there is what we call on click. That's why I told us programming is much more simpler than people think. You just need to learn basic rules. On click sounds like English language, isn't it? Means when the user click on this button. That is what on click means. If the user click on this button, what do we want to do? Then they now wrote a JavaScript code that what will be executed. That means this code will only be executed when the user click on this button. Document dot get element by ID and my image. It's English. It's straightforward. I don't know whether it's because I have experience. That's why I understand it very straightforward. But document now is telling you that this HTML page, that is the document. Document is a representation of your entire HTML page. Then you say, go to this HTML page, look for the elements that have an ID of my image. I told us that ID is an attribute that you can apply to any image, any element of your choice. So here they have an image, img. That's why you have to know basic HTML. IMG elements have an attribute of ID, which is equal to my image. So this one, you are the one that will type it to. It's not like the computer will generate it for you. You can name it either my image or picture or anything. But I explained ID in the last class. So if you have been following us, you know what is an ID. So get element by ID, and the ID is my image. And then change the source. You see the source. That's why they say JavaScript can change the attribute of an element. An attribute is what? ID, source, style. All these ones are called attributes. So now it will look for this element and it will change the source from this one to this one. That is just what it means. So it's invariably replacing. That means we have two pictures in the source code. That means in the folder there is two pictures. So when you click on, it will show this picture. When you click on off, it will automatically change the source. So it's just changing the image. That is just what it's doing. So it's readable and straightforward. That is just it. So JavaScript can change CSS. So you can see I just show us that you can change attributes. You can change the CSS. You can use JavaScript to increase the font size or change the background when the user do something. JavaScript can hide elements. So this one I use it almost every day. In a website, a lot of things are hidden. I showed us, I have closed it. That Twitter page. By default, that modal is hiding. It is when you click on sign in that it will show. So there's a JavaScript that is what modifying the style to either show it or hide it. JavaScript can show elements, it can hide, it can show. This one is as long as it can change CSS, it means it can hide and show because CSS has a property for display. If the display is none, it means it has hide it. If the display is blocked, it will show it. So JavaScript and Java are completely two different things. They have no relationship. And then JavaScript have older versions. That is not our problem for now because we are not going to learn the old version of JavaScript. Okay, so that is it for this introduction. So JS, where to? All right, so how can you write JavaScript? I think that is what they are trying to look at here. How can you write JavaScript? Well, in HTML, JavaScript code is inserted between the script elements. So we are going to do that. But in your HTML, you can't just write JavaScript because JavaScript is a programming language. Don't expect that you write it like other HTML elements. It has its own rule. JavaScript is different from HTML. So if you want to write JavaScript, just like how in CSS, if you want to add CSS, you can maybe create a style element, and in between the style elements, you write your CSS. The same thing here, we have a script element. In between the script elements, we can add our JavaScript code. So this line here is a JavaScript code. But this script element is an HTML element that is telling the computer that anything in between this script is what interpreted as JavaScript. Yeah. So JavaScript, old JavaScript have the script.type, but you don't need this anymore. Just put script. It's just trying to give you some history. JavaScript functions and events. A JavaScript function is a block of code that can be executed when called. So we are going to explain it. Like this code here will always be executed immediately you run your HTML. You execute your HTML, it will run. But there are code that you don't want it to execute unless when the user do something. Like that on click on I showed you now. This code here is not going to be executed by default unless the user click. So it's just like the on click, we carry this code and put it in a function. And that function will only be called when the user click on this button. So just get it in your back of your head like function is just a block of code that you can call. Call means you can execute it. So that is what it means. So JavaScript head or body. JavaScript is advisable to be in part of your bottom at the end of your page. That is because JavaScript sometimes can take time to execute. It's advisable to be, well, people can tell you different things, but the best thing for me is it should always be at the end because the HTML should load before the JavaScript. All right, JavaScript in body, blah, blah, blah. Just take your time to read them. Some of them, don't let it confuse you. It's just to read and pass. The main thing is understand the general overview. So output of JavaScript, when you run your JavaScript, where should it be displayed? Where can you see the results? You can put it inside an element. You can use document.write, windows.alert, and console.log. Let me tell you, in real life, it's console.log you will use 99.999%. All these other ones, just know them, but you generally don't use them. So I will show us console.log very shortly. So this one, they're just telling you the different one. Document.write is dangerous. So look at it in red. All right, so you don't even use it in real life. That's just what I'm saying. So don't let it intimidate you. Console.log is what you use almost always. So JavaScript, Windows or plain. I don't even know that there's something like this before. So that's why I say a lot of things is good to study them, but in real life you'll be using just few of them. So don't get worried when you can't memorize everything. Just understand that okay, if you want to execute JavaScript, there are different ways you can display your results. But don't worry yourself with cramming them. So we have JavaScript syntax and statements, blah blah blah. So the statement, each line is just what they call a statement. Don't let it. It's not any big thing. Just like when you are coming to any feed, they have their own terminology. So a statement is each line of code, and then by default, it's recommended to end it with semicolon, but it's not a must. So you are going to learn a lot of things. White space are important in some places, they are not important in some places. So you learn what is syntax. There are some few syntax is just a rule. So there are some few rules you will learn. So just try to get yourself familiar with those small things. How to put a semicolon, where to put your equal to. All those things are little things you just have to learn it with practice gradually. But they are basic things. We have comments. Comment is just a line of code that is not executed. It's just a comment. It doesn't have any meaning to the computer. You are putting it for your own sake so that you remember something. So like this line now is a comment. Any line that starts with slash slash, the computer will ignore it. So you learn variables. Variable is just like a container for storing something, different data types. You learn variable, you learn how to declare a variable using let, const. You learn operators. Operators is just similar to the mathematical operators. We have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and the rest of them. Just some of them are a little different from maths. So division is not your x. The multiplication is not x, it's using this asterisk. We have exponential division, So these are theories you can just flip and read and try to understand the basic things. You will first of all use them. So these are some of the basic things you can start doing with your computer. You can use it for simple calculations. Just use JavaScript to learn how to do small calculations. And then with time, you learn data types, function, objects, events, and yeah. So if you can finish this section, I think you have learned most of the basic things. The rest ones are pretty much advanced, which I don't think they are that necessary at this point. So once you can finish this first section, I think you will know enough to even build something very important. So let me do some little practical, right? So that we can see JavaScript in action. All right, so this is one of the work, something we did the last time. So I'll open this folder with code, VS Code. Okay, so hello everyone. Are we guys following? Any questions? Any question? Okay, so I believe you know. So this is normal HTML. This is what we used to practice the last time, right? When I explained HTML and CSS for us and we built this thing. I was expecting us to at least post what we have designed. I said we should go and design a blog page. And by now, I was expecting us to have posted it in the group. Well, I don't know why I didn't get any. I didn't see anybody's one. All right, so this HTML now, we want to add some interactivity using JavaScript. So the first thing is you want to add JavaScript to this code, right? Right now, there's no JavaScript. You want to add JavaScript. As I said, it's recommended that you put your JavaScript at the bottom before the closing body. The easiest way you can write JavaScript is to simply write a script tag, and in between the script tag, you can write your JavaScript. So JavaScript, because you are in between this script now, you'll be writing a programming language. So there are some simple rules you need to know. One is programming language has a lot of rules. It's not like HTML. HTML can permit a lot of things. Programming language, if I just write like this and I save and I run this thing, the HTML will run fine. But if I open, use control, just press F12, it will open this window for you. And then you click on console. This is what we call developer console, developer environment. So this environment is mainly assumed to be for developers. That is why when you open your browser, you will not see it until you intentionally press F12 on Chrome. Then you'll be able to see this environment. So this environment, you can see the source code. That means the element, HTML element. You can observe the network. That means if this site is making any network call, you can see the source code. You can see HTML, CSS. You can see the console. All right. So console is like an output. It's just like when you are playing a game, your console is what gives you the output. So console is like output. So also console is where by default your JavaScript engine will always show you the result or error in your JavaScript. So I open this HTML. I enter in between this script now. I'm supposed to write a HTML code, sorry, a JavaScript code, but I just wrote nonsense. And then it's telling me that uncaught reference error, blah, blah, blah is not defined because you can't just write anything. What you are writing must have meaning. It's either you are writing a function, or you are declaring a variable, or you are doing something. You can't just write anything. You can't say, okay, I want to show hello world, and then you just type hello world like this. It won't still work, right? Just refresh it and see. Uncalled syntax error, unexpected identifier at so line. It's telling you that the error is happening at this line, line 59. So if you are in between your script, just know that you are writing JavaScript. Follow the rules of JavaScript, not HTML or CSS anymore. The same thing when you are inside the style element, you follow the rules of CSS, not HTML. So now in this JavaScript, the first thing is I will use a function. We have a function called alert, and I will use this alert function to create an alert. Alert is just when the person go to the page, it will show the person a message. And the alert I want to show the person here is hello world. You see, when you use VS Code, there is a lot of advantage. Immediately I type alert, the color changed to yellow, telling me that this is a function. With experience, you get to know the color. The color have meaning. Yellow is for function. And then when I type alert, it's telling me that I need to put the first uh, bracket is where the beginning of my parameters. So here is telling me type a message, and that message have to be a string. So don't worry yourself where it's a string. With time, you get to know that there is what we call data types. A number is a number, is a data type. We have string. String is like just a normal character. So I don't know how to explain it simply, and I don't want to bug you with too much knowledge at the same time. But the string, for you to write a string, it has to start with this apostrophe, either single or double apostrophe, and end with apostrophe. So this is a string. I believe you guys have been using it now. Look at it, all these places in HTML, we have a lot of string too. All right, so I just type an alert, hello world. So this is a function, and because it's a function, I'm calling this function. Once you put this bracket in front of a function, you are calling it, you are telling it to execute. So this code will not wait for the user to click on anything. Immediately the user go on that page. Picture this thing, understand how the computer work. The computer execute this code line by line. So immediately you save this thing and you go and refresh that HTML. The HTML, the computer behind the scene have what we call interpreter. The interpreter will be reading it line by line and be executing it. So to interpret, okay, this is the beginning, this is HTML, this is CSS, this is this. When it reach here now, it say, okay, this is a JavaScript script. Okay, display alert hello world. So it's line by line. So because this one I'm executing the function, it will show this hello world immediately I refresh. So let's refresh. You see hello world. And then the HTML will not show first because that is how it behaves. If there's an alert, the HTML will not show. So you see there's no error. So immediately, if you are working with JavaScript, one rule of thumb is always open your console, this environment. Always open it to always check if there's an error. Because in fact, for a beginner, just know that this is where you'll be doing most of your learning. Always open here to see error. This is where you put your output. So I just showed us one method of displaying the output of our code. We are displaying it in an alert box. So you can use alert to show the result. So I can say, okay, alert, and then in between the alerts, I want to show 4 plus 3, 7, Abi, and then I refresh. It shows me 7, the result. So alert will calculate this thing and give me the result. So you can use alert to display something, the result of your JavaScript calculation or computation or function. But alert is not too good like that. The easiest and the best is console. You say console.log hello world. So you are telling me that console is a place. This place here, look at it, is written console. I mean, you are saying console.log. So console is a class that is representing this place. And then you are saying in this console, I want to log. So dot is a function inside console. So it's being separated with this dot. Don't worry yourself again. You will get to know some of these things with time. So dot log. So you are telling me that log this thing inside the console. What am I logging? Hello world. And that is why when I come here and I refresh, always remember anytime you change something here, come here and refresh. If you don't want to be refreshing, you can use live server. The last time I showed us how to use live server, right? Live server, I even remove it because I don't like it. Okay. So, but that is it, Sham. So console.log, this is hello world now. You see, it shows only the hello world because you tell it to log hello world. So that is why you don't expect it to show this line. Just like in your HTML, it will not show the code, it will show the result. That is what we are seeing here, right? To show the results. The same thing, JavaScript, when you say console.log, it is what you are logging that will show, not your code. So we are seeing hello world here, and then it's telling us it's in line 59. All right, so this is very basic. In JavaScript, most of the time you'll be creating what we call variable. Just know that variable is a container that is holding your data. What is a data? A data is just, I don't know, a data is just a piece of information. That data can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a boolean, it can be other data types, an object or an array. That is why I'm still warning, don't worry yourself with too much thing at a time. Learn one thing at a time. So I, for me to create a variable in JavaScript, in those days we use the var keyword. When you say var, then you name the variable. A container should have a name. If you don't name it, it won't work. So I want to create a variable called what? I want to call it animal. A variable called animal, and it will be storing anything. It can store anything. But let me store the name of an animal called dog and then put semicolon. So this line now is a JavaScript code for creating a variable. I'm saying variable is a keyword. So computer is not a winch. It will not know that you want to create a variable. So the people that created this JavaScript, they reserve some words. Those words are what we call key words. They are words that when you just type them, they have a meaning. It's just like you are, I don't know which example, but the people that created it, they reserve some words. Just like here, if you use aside, you use H4, you use P, it all have meaning, right? So the same thing in JavaScript, var has a meaning. It is what? A keyword used for creating a constant, a variable. That is just it. But this is for the old JavaScript. It's no longer advisable to use var anymore. Modern JavaScript, you use let. It's just like saying let's create a variable. So use things that will make you to remember things easily. So let is just like a way of saying let's create a variable called animal, and then we assign. Equal to is for assignment to. This equal to sign here you are seeing is called an assignment operator. It's not the same equal to in mathematics. So don't assume that this thing is saying animal is equal to dog. Is wrong. The right way of describing this line 59 is let's create a variable called animal and let's save this word dog inside it. That is what this line 59 means. So let is a keyword for creating a variable. And the name of that variable is what? Animal. So there are rules for creating names of variables. Go and read about it. I can't explain them. There are few of them, but definitely a variable must not a name must not have space in between, and it cannot start with a number. That is one of the simple rules you should know. Immediately you write the name, so there must be space. If you just say let and you didn't put space, it will not know that it's a keyword. You see everything is joined, the color even change. So you type let space animal. If you like, you don't put space again between animal and equal to, no problem. But it's advisable to separate them with space so that it will look clean. Let's create a variable. The name of that variable is animal. And then I told us that equal to is assigning. That means we are putting something inside that variable. We can actually create a variable without putting anything inside. So it means that this variable has been created, but the variable is not what being instantiated. That means it doesn't have anything inside, it's empty. But when we create it, we can decide it's advisable, common practice. Then immediately you create it, you will store something. And if you want to store something, just say equal to be, then you put this thing inside this variable of animal. You can store a number, you can store a number. So you see, if I'm typing number, I don't need to put this is the apostrophe. I don't need to put apostrophe. So use your color code to your advantage. Number, you don't need to put apostrophe, and you see the color is different. When I'm typing the string, even if it's a number that is in between this apostrophe, it's called a string. It's actually a number inside a string. So it will be treated as a string, not as a number. And then we can save a boolean. Boolean is just true or false, either true or false. We can save decimal, you get it, or 0 point something something. But for now, I can just decide to save cat. And now this variable is holding what? Cat. So variable is like a box that is holding what? What is it holding at the moment? It's holding a string called cat. So I can say console.log. I want to display this what this animal variable is holding. Let's assume I don't know. I'm the one that I know is cat, but let's assume I don't know. And I say console.log animal, and then I save and refresh. You see, it's showing me cat. So when you are working, sometimes you want to know what a variable is holding at that particular moment. You can what use console.log and put the name of the variable, and you see it. Now, because variable is holding cat, I can decide to add something to it also using the plus operator. Cat is good. Save it, refresh. You see, cat is good here because animal here is a variable that is holding what cat. So anytime you are using animal, just know that it is holding something. So that is the difference. The color, you let your color be your friend. Oh. You see, if you just type cat here, it will not work. Oh. If you say let cat, it doesn't understand what is cat. Let me just show you, and then I refresh. It say uncaught error, animal is not defined because animal, it doesn't even know what is animal because you just type animal. It's either when you are typing something in JavaScript, it's either that thing is a variable or it's a keyword or it's a data type or it's an operator or it's a function. It has to be something. So you can't just say animal, computer will not understand what is animal. It's either you say let animal, that means you are creating a variable called animal, and then you save and we refresh. Now it will know that there is animal, but animal is having the value of undefined. So you say undefined is good. That is because we created animal, but we didn't put anything inside. So when you don't put anything inside a variable, it will be carrying undefined as its name. And that is why it say undefined is good. Because there's nothing inside. So it is now we can now say, okay, food. We are saving food inside animal. Well, it's wrong, but let's let's refresh. You see, food is good. So why did I say it's wrong? It's logical, is technically correct, You can name your variable anything and you can put anything inside. But this is where good programmers are known from bad programmers. Let your variable name always have the same meaning with what you are putting inside. You can't say your variable name is animal and you are saving food. No. If you say you are creating a variable name animal, then you should use it to save maybe a name of animal or something related to animal, right? So you can say dog and then you save and refresh. Dog is good. So this is like an overview class. So don't worry, there are a lot of knowledge you may be getting. Some of us already know this, but I'm just trying to make it simple for you to know that this thing is simple. You can learn it and you can be good with it. All right, so I just explained variable to some extent. We can create another variable. Um, let price equals to 50. If you put 50 naira or end 50, it will give you an error because it doesn't know what is n. So it has to be a number, it should just be a number or a fraction, right? So don't put alphabet with number, it will not know what it means. All right. Or you can create another variable for a boolean, say is is paid equal to false. You see, I'm trying to write it in a way that makes sense for me. I can name it anything, but I'm naming it in a way that makes sense. So that is just one rule. All right, so this is one way of writing JavaScript, but the best and advisable way of writing JavaScript is not to have it here because this JavaScript code can be so long. So your HTML will also be long. Don't expect your HTML to be short. Like HTML can be 1,000 page line of code, and then your JavaScript tools can be going to 1,000 maybe or hundreds of lines. So if you join everything now, this page will be too long. You'll be scrolling too much to find things. That is why the advisable way is in your code structure, have one file for HTML, have another file for your CSS, then create another file for your style, for your script. You can name it anything. You can say my JS or my script or my anything, but always end it with .js. I don't want to explain that again. I believe we know that .html is for an HTML file, .css is for a CSS file, .js is for a JavaScript file. So you see, Visual Studio will even change the color appropriately here to let you know that you name it correctly. So it means I created a JavaScript file here, but even if I copy what is in my JavaScript, this guy here, and I cut it or copy it, paste it in my JavaScript file. Then I will remove this one. So this is one method, but I don't like it. You can use it, but if your code is becoming long, it's advisable you move it. If I save everything, remember this guy is saved, and then I come here, I refresh, I will not see anything. This thing, I explain it in CSS, is the same rule in JavaScript. Who can tell me what is the error here? What is the mistake? Why can't we see this result in our JavaScript?
Yeah, it's not limited.
Yeah, perfectly. We've not linked it. Yeah, thank you very much, Saving. So we have not linked it. So the same way with your CSS, you have to link it. And the linking doesn't mean you have to link it in the head. I told us this code is executed line by line. I will explain to us if there is time next time why if you link it at the top, it may not work as expected because your JavaScript will be manipulating your HTML. So it's expected that this HTML should load before the JavaScript manipulate them. If you are trying to execute the JavaScript, even though it is in another file, just know, even though this CSS is in another file here, you see where we link it. This CSS will all be executed first before the HTML. So it means the computer will copy this CSS and know, oh, there's a styling for P, there's a styling for H1. So that when it reach that H1 line, it will apply the style to it if you have not added extra style. You get it now. That is why CSS should be at the top first you are giving the style ahead of time so that when the interpreter reach that line and it sees H1, it knows that, oh, you have already given a style for H1 here. Do you get it? Why CSS should come before HTML? But JavaScript is different. JavaScript, you are creating, you are telling it that look for any H1, H2, and give it an underline of red. But you put your JavaScript at the top. It do not know that it doesn't, this page has not loaded. The interpreter don't even know that there's a H2, and you're telling it that it should look for H2. So it will not make sense. So well, let me even do that practically. So I can say script. So when you are typing the same script, there is a version that have source, just like your img. So if you want to link JavaScript, you use the same script element, the one we used under, but this time around, you will not put the JavaScript code in between the element. You put it in the script attribute. So you say dot. So I will just say dot slash my script. You have to name it correctly, .js, and then I save, and then I refresh. So you see, dog is good. So what is happening here is that this thing will be executed line by line. If you reach this CSS, it will go to this file first and finish everything here before it come back to the next line. So if you come to this line 8, it will go inside this file, execute the whole line before it come back to line 9. So understand how it works. Now, I'm going to do something. I want to use JavaScript to modify my HTML quickly. I know our time is fast spent, so wait, this time will run sometime. I want to modify this H4. So this H4 is aside. Okay, so that is this text here. This is aside. So it's looking too small. I want to use JavaScript to make it to be big. It's something you can do, but just assume that there are things that you don't know ahead of time the size, or you don't know ahead of time some things. So you want to do those things when the user do something, then you do that thing. So that is where the power of JavaScript is. It's not like I can't increase this size or give it a different color. No, it's because we don't know the color ahead of time. We don't know the size ahead of time until the user do something. So that is where JavaScript shines. So let me delete everything here because I've finished with this explanation. Now I want to, because I've linked my JavaScript to my HTML, I want to use this JavaScript to manipulate part of the HTML. So I can now come and say that there's what we call document. Document is a keyword. It's like a keyword. It's not a keyword, but it's like a keyword in JavaScript. Anytime you type document, it is a reference to this HTML, the entire HTML code. That is what they represent as document. So document is a class and it has a lot of functions. One of the function is dot. Immediately you type dot, it means you have access to the function and properties of document. So dot get elements. If you're even typing it, it will show you the remaining one. Get element by ID. I can say get element by tag. Get element by tag name. You get it now. But get element by ID is like the most common and advisable because you just need only that particular element. Get element by ID, let's name it aside header. Now this get element by ID aside header, if we see it, we should change its type and give it what? A font which is equal to 2033 pixels. Sorry, because I'm writing 33 pixels, I have to save it as a string. Okay, so I can save and refresh here, and it says cannot read property of null. Now, with time, you need to learn how to interpret error. Because I am experienced, so I understand what this thing means. But take your time to always read these errors. Cannot read property of null, reading style. So what it means is it's even telling you the line one in your JavaScript. So this is line one. So it's trying to execute style, but everything here is null. Now, this is what makes it null. Document cannot be null, definitely. Get element by ID is a function. Now, get element by ID goes into your HTML. It looks for any element that have an ID of what? Aside header. And it doesn't see it. So it returns null. And because it doesn't see it, the result is null. We are trying to what? Style something that doesn't exist. And that is why it says we cannot what? Cannot read property of null, reading style. So don't worry, the English is a little bit confusing, but that is what it actually means. So it means I should copy this ID, go to that my H4. It doesn't have to be this H4. Any code, any element that I want to have that ID. I can come and say ID is equals to aside header. I'm naming it aside header because it's inside the aside element and it's a header. So name it something meaningful. So if I refresh, there is no error, but this style didn't work, and I don't know why. We'll get it now. So let me see when we go back to our documentation. That's why there nobody is perfect. I can't remember some of these basic things that I don't do them in real life. I don't use get element by ID because there are stages you use framework that does all those things for you. So all right, so okay, so it's supposed to be font size. So there's no CSS for actually font. So I made a mistake. Font is wrong. It's supposed to be font size. And then I see. So sometimes something will not work and it will not tell you error. So you still use your head now to figure out where the error will come from. And then I refresh. So you see it's now looking big. They will get it now. So I just use JavaScript to change the size. I can decide to save what this document.get element by ID. Save it inside a variable. Now you can create a variable using the let keyword or using the const keyword, right? So you get to know learn the difference, please. I can't explain that now. But just know that always use const when you are naming something that will not change. But use let to name something that you think will change. So by recommendation, it's recommended to use const first. And if you think that you want to rename it, then you can use let. But for now, I can create a variable using the constant. Just know that const stands for constant variable. I'm creating a constant variable for what? Aside header element. And I name it this. So I'm saying what this guy got from this document.get element by aside. I'm saving it in this variable. And then I can say if aside header element, if it is not equal to null, then I should do aside header element execute. I should change this type. So I'm telling my JavaScript now. That's why I say JavaScript is a programming language. It gives you so much power. You have the power of if. So I'm saying go to this document, this HTML document, get any element that have this ID, and then save. If you find the element or any result that you get, save it in this variable called aside header element. And then I come to this line. If aside element is not equal to null, this is the sign of not equal to. Equal to, you use 3 or 2 equal sign. The 3 is always advisable. Not equal to, you use just this sign, this is a null sign, I don't know, exclamation sign and equal to means not equal to. But it's advisable to use exclamation and two equal to for not equal to. You will get to know the difference later in the future. Now, if this variable is not null, then execute line 4. If it is null, it will do nothing. So let me prove to you that it will do nothing. If I remove this ID completely, there is no element that have ID of that ID, and I refresh, you will not get error and it will not apply it. That is because you are using a null check. You are checking for null before you apply the style. That first time I wasn't checking for null and it tried to apply the style to something that doesn't exist. And I get an error. Alright, so let me put this type back, Ctrl Z, save, and I refresh. Aside header. Okay, did I name it wrongly? Aside header. And then if it is not null, I don't know, let me use it too. Okay, oh sorry, it applied. It's me, I'm looking for error and I didn't see error. I forgot. It actually applied it. The size is increasing. Do you get it now? Now it's becoming too fast. I can decide to say, okay, apply this style after 2 seconds. And then I can say, okay, there's what we call set timeout. And then set timeout will contain the handler function to contain a function that should be executed. And then the time you want it to execute after 2000 milliseconds, which is 2 seconds. Then I should do this. So I'm telling you that apply this style after 2 seconds. So if I refresh, 1, 2, it shows. So you see the power of JavaScript. You have timer. That means you can execute something after few seconds or few hours or few minutes. And so when you go to some site, you'll be surprised. After a few minutes, they'll tell you, hey, sign up. Or hey, click on this thing to do this. There's a timer. This is a simple timer they just use, set timeout. And then we can say, okay, because the essence of saving a variable is that you can use this thing repeatedly without repeating this line. Document the get element. Everywhere you want to do document the get element by ID, this. You have already saved it in this variable and you can use it 100 times. You can say aside header dot style dot color equal to blue, and I save and refresh. It will do 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then it shows it. Do you see it now? So I'm manipulating the style of this element using JavaScript, and I'm manipulating it after some seconds, and that is if the element exists. So in this class, I've shown us some basic. One, introduction to JavaScript, show you how you can write your JavaScript. You can write it either in the script element at the bottom or either in the script in a different file, and you link them, right? And then you can create variables with let, const, and you can display your result using alert or console, and you can do so many things with JavaScript. First of all, you can manipulate your HTML using JavaScript. You can add event listener. Let me just say that one lastly. So below this page, let me add a button that says click me to greet you. Let me save it and see. So do one thing at a time, don't do too many things. So this is a button I added. You see the JavaScript is still executing now. So this is a button I added. Sorry, in HTML you don't put semicolon. Okay. Alright, so this is a button. If I click the button, nothing's happened, right? Now I can come to my JavaScript, my bottom here and say on click. On click is an event listener. It listens to what the user will do when the user clicks something. So when the user click, I want to call a function that says greet me. For now, let me not call function so that I don't confuse the people more. Let me just display an alert. You are welcome. Now that alert is inside a string. Oh, look at it. On click, everything is inside a string, and that string also have another string inside. So alert of welcome. Study. This is syntax. Nobody, I can't explain this very well. You have to study it on your own too. So when I refresh and then I click on this, click me to greet you, you see an alert shows. This is what we call event listener. You listen to when the user click or do something. Or I can decide that, okay, this color should only change when the user click on that button. So it means because I want this color to only change when the user click on that button, that means I will not allow this thing to be executing, because right now immediately I refresh, it execute this code on its own. So I can decide to cut this code and put it inside a function, and then name the function greet me, and then the function will be this. Now, because I'm using that, maybe I don't want it to wait 2 seconds after I click on it, so I should remove the timeout and then just apply the style, and let me save it. Now, if I save it, it don't still work. I click on it, it's still showing alert, right? That is because I haven't changed the HTML. So I have to come and change this event listener here, and let's change it to calling greets me. The spelling has to be correct, so always copy if you can. Copy and paste it, because if you want to type it, you will make mistake. So you call greet me. I tell you that for you to call a function, just type the name of the function and put this bracket. If the function is expecting a parameter here, then you have to type the parameter and you also have to add it here. But for now, don't worry about parameters. I just want to show you what JavaScript can do. So if I click on refresh, nothing happened. See, 2 seconds, this guy didn't change because I've changed the logic. It will only make this guy to be big and add the color if I click on this button. Do you see it now? So that is what JavaScript can do. It can do so many things. That's why I say JavaScript is where the main thing starts. So please learn JavaScript very well. JavaScript is where the money is also. Remote remote jobs. If you come to remote jobs, I don't know. I just wanted to show some few things. When you come to job sites, the jobs are always there, so I just want to like motivate us a little bit. When you come to jobs, you always get jobs for JavaScript like everywhere. Front end. So when you see front end, just know that it's JavaScript. Front end developer is JavaScript general. Some people are just saying JavaScript. So React Native is JavaScript. Senior web engineer is JavaScript. Like look at it, React.js. That's why I say when you learn JavaScript, you definitely use React. React, full stack, front end is JavaScript. Just know it. Full stack, mostly JavaScript. Front end, Java. Even back end can be done with JavaScript. So there are a lot of jobs. These ones are foreign jobs. They are not Nigerian jobs, most of them. So you can be in Nigeria and you can be doing those jobs. And you can earn in dollar or any currency they want to pay. So you see this another site, Nodex, senior React developer, um, software engineering manager. So some of them have the price or the money. So this one is 80,000 pounds. Some 50,000 pounds. Senior React Native developer, 50,000 to 300,000 dollars. So these things are real. It's not when they tell you that somebody can learn JavaScript and be earning millions. So imagine you're earning $50,000 dollars. and then not in a month, in a year. So in a month, you are roughly earning $5,000. Convert it to naira is how much? Is roughly 2 point something million. So that is why you see guys here, a boy like living big. You think they are doing Yahoo. It's not everyone that is doing Yahoo. A lot of people do legitimate work online and they make a lot of money. Even in those ones are for people that have experience. So man, no wine on that. They say if you just learn now, you start to earn. This one are for people that have very good experience. So you may have to start from Nigeria first. So this is Java man, this is for Nigerian. So even within Nigeria one is still not bad. Front end engineer, this one they did put how many years experience? 250K to 400K. It's not bad in Nigeria at least. I mean, this is an intern. Intern, so they are giving you software and data intern, and they're giving you 250K as an intern. Is it bad? It's not bad. Any 250K, how many work in Nigeria will give you this kind of pay? Senior front end engineer, 400 to 600. So what am I telling you? This my first job. I got it from this site of Jobber Man. You don't need connection. You just need to learn the skill. I applied here. They called me. I passed the interview, and they say, "Congratulations, you can start." That is how it is. And from then, I felt I know a lot. I change job at the way I like. I choose to change job. You know, they even fear say them to sack you because you know that you will definitely get jobs, especially when you have 1, 2 years experience. Forget about job. You'll be the one to choose where to work. So there's opportunities. That is just what I'm trying to emphasize. Learn JavaScript. These small things you are learning here is very, very, very important. So pay the price, learn the basic. This may not be enough. Google it again and read more. Practice, get error, practice, get error, fix them, go through the pain, and very soon you'll get used to it and you'll come out with success and flying colors. So thank you all and God bless you. Any question? I've really taken a lot of time. I know some people couldn't type. Any question? Hello, is it that everybody is sleeping? All right. So how far? How is it? Any question or any challenge or anything? All right. So the whole thing is in your hand. You have the resources. You can use other sites. There's another site, but their own is a little advanced. That's why I just wish you guys should use. So this JavaScript.info, theirs is very comprehensive, but it can be too advanced for a beginner. But if you need more explanation also, come to javascript.info. You will also learn a lot, like they will teach you a lot of theories. You do some practicals and assignments, and it's just the best. So just picture yourself from now to December, you will know JavaScript very well. If you are very disciplined, you should be able to get a paid intern, reasonable amount to paid intern before the end of the year. And if you work 6 months as an intern, just know that you can resign in that place and look for full-time offer that pays you even far better. You don't need any degree. You don't even need to go to school. So as long as you can do it, that is what they're important with. So I think if there's no question, we call it a day. Thank